Hello! Yet another day of the Fringe. I'm in the Fringe Central, which was very, very noisy a few seconds ago. There's all stuff going on, and now it's thankfully very quiet. And I'm interviewing the lovely Morna Burdon, who's got a show at the Scottish Storytelling Centre. Look, there she is. Hello, Morna. How are you? How's it going so far?
It's going very well. I've had full houses and 3 shows to go with another full house tonight. So there's still tickets though for tomorrow and the next night.
Well, yeah. And the tickets are £10 and £12, or special deals for families, I believe, maybe, possibly. You need to go there. Scottish Storytelling Centre, is it a lovely venue to be using?
It is a lovely venue. It's very welcoming. There's a kind of a modern part, and then it's linked to a historic building called John Knox House. And although it's got, and there's a courtyard outside, and so there's a whole mixture of people go there. And although it's called the Scottish Storytelling Centre, which it is, it's an international centre, so it's international work that goes on throughout the year, as well as during the Fringe.
Yeah, and it's really good. It's what sort of other shows are there apart from yours?
Well, there's quite a lot of one-person shows, I've noticed. I'll go. I knew you were going to ask something like this. Recalled. There's just so many. There's one that I saw. I didn't see it in the Fringe. It's called Thunderstruck, and it's all about a very, what's the word, cutting-edge bagpipe player, funnily enough. And it's wonderful. And there was one that I saw, which I think it was called Nobody Is Coming, which I thought was a dodgy kind of title. But again, I think this woman was from Ireland. That was very good. It was a beautiful one-man show. There's a theatre and there's a studio, and both of them are really delightful. So there really are good shows that are on. I've enjoyed every one that I've been to as yet. I wouldn't name it if I didn't like them.
No, well, of course not. So can you tell us a bit about your show?
Yeah, my show's called Gaze Peace. That means give us peace. And it's songs and stories about women who have taken either, courageous, creative, inventive, sometimes illegal, definitely dangerous ways to try and make the world a bit of a more peaceful place. And it's over many years. It goes back centuries and then up to present day. And so it's about real women. That idea came originally from another show that I did that I've got this on my website called Bonnie Fechters. Bonnie Fechters means good fighters. It really means, in the colloquial sense, it just means, she stands up for herself. That's kind of what a Bonnie Fechter is in my world. So it was about women who'd stood up for themselves in various ways, again, throughout the centuries. But there was one story in that was about women in Vietnam who were put into cages in solitary confinement. And when they were asked by a peace committee how on earth they'd survived, they said, we sang songs of defiance and hope. And so that's what stimulated this show, because I thought, I wonder how many other women I could find that, were doing that kind of thing. So that's where it came from.
So, and you've written it all yourself? There's all, is it poetry and song, or?
No, it's I've created it. I mean, some of the songs are written by other people, but the actual whole show I've put together. And I think there's one poem now at the end, and that's because I have a different show that is poetry and songs. And I wrote that during lockdown and just after lockdown. And so there is one poem that I've written in it, but otherwise it's kind of stories, real stories and songs.
Ah, yes, I see. So it's a storytelling song extravaganza, just a one person.
Yeah, and it's not formal storytelling. It's just passing on people's, it starts with a woman up in Caithness in the Scottish Highlands who objected to a nuclear reactor being in her, on her doorstep. And it ends with the poem about the Ukraine war. So there's people there from Africa, Ireland, Czech Republic, just all over the world, really. And one of the deliberate things that I try to do is that some of them are women who the world might see as having achieved incredible things, but it also goes along with what people call ordinary women who have also achieved incredible things, but folk don't know so much about them. And I quite like that. I quite like, because we're all stars in our own show, aren't we? If you like. And I find that an interesting one about protagonists and all of that, informal theatre. It's because everyone's got a story. And I quite like the fact that a lot of people's stories get told here.
Yeah, it's good to shine a light on people's stories that you don't necessarily see in formal history. I mean, you look at it and you see, the kings and the queens and the but you don't, and the politicians, but you don't really see a lot of the time the folk history and the oral history. So it's good to, and especially the women's history and other people, the minorities. So it's really good to explore those aspects of history. So did you find anything that you weren't expecting when you were researching for the show?
Oh, I found loads of things. So one of the things that I found interesting was, I don't want to give too much of the show away, but here's 2 examples of the famous and the not famous, and they're both surprises. One was that one of the songs that I sing in the show was one that Marlene Dietrich made famous, and I knew she was a wonderful singer and actor, but what I didn't know was the amount of work that she did to rescue people during World War II and the danger she put herself in to do that. And I didn't know about that. And then at the same time, I discovered that my niece lived on Faz Lane Peace Camp. Now, I knew that her brother lived there, but I didn't know that she lived there. And so she told me a story about that. So another friend that I have, not a friend, an acquaintance, and I was just telling her that I was doing a show about peace. She listened very patiently to all my ideas. And then she very quietly said, well, I might have a bit of a story. And she had an amazing story. And so, yeah, there's quite a lot of surprises, actually, along the way. Yeah.
That's good, because you've managed to spotlight people that really wouldn't have been spotlighted in any other way. So, no, that's excellent. So how is your Fringe this year? Is it different to how it normally is? Or do you come up here a lot, first of all? Sometimes.
Well, I stay in Edinburgh, so I
live in Edinburgh,
here, so that's quite simple for me to go. Yeah. I'm from Dundee, but I live in Edinburgh. For me, I found it a really good. I found it a really good Fringe. I mean, I'm not like other performers who come from elsewhere and they have to find accommodation, pay for accommodation. They have to orientate themselves. They have to get the travel expenses paid, and so I don't have any of that. And I have found. I really like the variety of audiences that come. And also the whole Fringe setup, the Edinburgh Fringe setup. The way I would describe it is it's very kind, very, very helpful and kind. The people that are there to support artists. And in fact, throughout the year, usually you don't really have an awful lot of support. If you're a one-person show, you get on and do it yourself. And then venues can be helpful along the way. So this is a really nice period. There's a whole kind of cushion of support around you. I find other people, I don't know, they might find different. But that's what, I like lots of different workshops and things that are on, and then meeting people from throughout the world. That's wonderful because it's a strange profession. We are all, I think what I like about Fringes is that I've experienced it as renegades, vagabonds. You know, we are the kind of flotsam and jetsam. Forgive me, anybody who's in theatre who doesn't think they're flotsam and jetsam. But, you know, we don't fit in very well to the we recognise each other, and it makes no sense to what we do other than we want to do it, and other than you are passing on folks' stories, whether it be theatre or whatever you're doing, you're passing on human beings' stories, and for whatever reason, people need that. It's happened since forever, and we need that somehow, and I enjoy being part of that.
Yeah, but I mean, being here all year round, do you notice a significant difference in the feeling of the city during the Fringe?
I'm probably the most diplomatic way to say that is yes.
Because I know there's a lot of resentment from some.
Well, I mean, I think that sort of thing. It's like bad news always gets the headlines, does it? I don't experience. I mean, there are some people who get fed up of it, but then most people seem to be enjoying. I think that one thing that still needs to happen more of, and they're trying to do, is to try to make sure that the people of Edinburgh, and that means everybody, are more involved, and that involves things that are not part of my world. Really, it's not my decisions, but about ticket prices, about where the venues, where the work happens, what it is, so that because the Fringe was set up, because the Edinburgh Festival was set up in order to combat, if you like, that's the wrong word really, to move on from World War II, where lots of countries got together to kill each other, and the festival was set up to try and be peaceful and creative. And then the people who set up the Fringe noticed that they really needed another level, if you like. It was quite high art. They created the Fringe for that. And I think there's definitely, and I think that's why, for example, I've been in I'm not in the Free Fringe this year, but I've been in the Free Fringe before. And I think that's a really good thing, because it gives people a chance. It's a starting point for everybody, really. So I found that a very good experience. And so I think the different levels, if you like, are really good. I think the place was very empty during COVID. And I think I like the amount of people that are here just now, because sometimes it does get to be a lot of people. But then it's a bit like when you go tourist, you know, you're a tourist abroad, and you go, oh, all these tourists, and you forget that you're one.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think it's good that, I mean, it's felt very sort of everything's happening in Old Town, or very hubs of like the big venues and stuff. So there are parts of Edinburgh that are quite empty still. So what do you think about like spreading it around? Do you think it's better off being in central? Because I mean, Newtown, there's not as much going on this year even as there have been in past years, and so a lot of people that are coming, and a lot of artists, if you give them, for instance, a venue that's 2 minutes off Old Town, they'll go, that's too far away. So what do you feel about spreading it out?
I don't know. Well, I think that maybe ties in with making sure that local people, Edinburgh people, are involved, because wherever you're going to be having a venue, people will be there.
Yeah.
And they will either, so it may not be the visitors that are there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know all the details of why venues get involved, or where they get involved. It certainly is busy in the centre, but I think that if the arts in general are made relevant to everybody, then it would happen in the Fringe as well. So I think throughout the year there's a lot of different things on in Edinburgh. My particular thing would be the price. I mean, I'm not trying to keep a venue going, so therefore I have no idea what that is financially, but I do know that it can sometimes be quite dear for folk to go to the theatre. But there are try to do various. I mean, years and years and years ago, before the Edinburgh Fringe, I worked at a wonderful place called Theatre Workshop that genuinely was groundbreaking. And I remember creating a women's theatre week there, and there were 3 different prices for the week. There was like low price, middle price, high price. Nobody had to prove they were poor, but the people who could pay the biggest price were invited to donate extra.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, and some of them did.
Yeah, I think that's a good. There's a lot of different ways how to make art financially viable, because I mean there are a lot of people in the arts that are just doing it because they've got the money and they can just, oh, I've got a big show, and there are other people that are sort of in the middle, and but it's making arts accessible not just for the people watching it, but performing it is a bit of an issue, and it's an increasing issue.
Yeah, and there's movement happening. And it takes a long time. With me, I got involved a lot of years ago, actually as a community worker. I'd got into the Welsh College of Music and Drama but couldn't afford to go. And then I found out about this thing called community work, and you could do things like community theatre and maybe get into theatre, blah, blah. Yeah. And that was one of the, so, you know, there's not always, but I was talking to somebody about this recently, about accessibility in the arts. And it's funny because the arts actually are accessible to everyone if you're not paying. What I mean by that is if you're sitting in your own house like people used to do, and they'd play the accordion or play the spoons or they'd play the washboard, I mean, at home that was happening, well, that was totally accessible. Nobody had told them that it didn't belong to them, and nobody had, you know, it's a different, so there are different approaches. I think that anybody who wants to be involved in professional theatre, it would be really good if they could do that financially. And for anybody who wants to go to a theatre, it would be nice if it didn't exclude them financially or for other reasons. There is movement. I do think there's movement. It takes time.
Yeah, exactly. But it's nice to have the different, so I mean, the levels, but not exclude like high art that people that might not necessarily realise that is for them. Like there was a TV show a while ago, Paul Whitehouse, the comedian, is a big opera buff, and he went to Italy where opera is for everyone, and whereas in this country it's like, no. Pardon me. Yeah,
I mean, it's like things. Well, it's like Shakespeare. That was for everybody. It's like Commedia dell'arte. That was for everybody. And so it's quite interesting how it gets siphoned off. You know. But, I think the main thing for me is that if anybody wants to participate, then they should just try and do it, and not worry about the whole machine if they can. Although that's hard. But like at the Scottish Storytelling Centre, they say that it's stories eye to eye. I think it's eye to eye, heart to heart, and I can't remember the other one. But ultimately, I went to see a wonderful show last night, not at the Scottish Storytelling Centre. It was a place called the Adam Smith Centre, I think it's called. It's quite new. And it was about David Hume philosopher. It was about Adam Smith philosopher. I think things get separated off into high art and other kinds of art, and I don't think that's necessary, really. If you like the noise that people are making in opera, then, that's great. If you like the noise that people make in folk, that's great. If you like the noise that people make in rap, that's great. And if they enjoy doing it, that's great. They're not levels, that's been created. Noise, that sounds terrible. But you know what I mean? Different people have got different tastes, but there's not particularly one that's better than the other. And as you say with opera, it's very ordinary people's stories that are being told. So, it's just like, how on earth does that become what we... But then again, people are trying to kind of balance that out again. Apart from the cost, that can be tricky. Sorry, I'm not hearing you just now, Elise. Yeah. Okay, so I've lost contact with you vocally, Elise, just now. I can't hear what you're saying.
Right. What about now?
Right. Got you again. Sorry, I just thought I should tell you.
It's possible that I spilt water on my computer and messed it up. No, I was just splashing about with the water that I needed for my froggy throat.
Yeah.
I was just saying.
Just to get back to the Fringe, I do think it does. Go.
Yeah. To catch up now, we're on different wavelengths. So you're saying things, and then a minute later, I'm saying things. It's like we're on the moon, one of us.
Right. So, ask your question. Ask your question. I'll be quiet.
Yeah. No, that's all right. Well, so there's a bit of an artificial differentiation, I think, between high art and low art, which is there's room for everything, and there's room for everything, I think, in the same performance piece, really. And it shouldn't just be for one. If you appreciate something, then it's for you. So, yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, I think I think that I used to. A lot of years ago, I worked with very young children, 3 and 4-year-old, for about a year. It wasn't my cup of tea, but, it was fine. But they didn't know at the age of 3 and 4, they did not know they were not geologists. They did not know they were not acrobats. They didn't. So they would go and get a bit of stone and ask about it and be interested. They would do a somersault. They would go to the music corner. They didn't know that they were not able to do these things. They did them. Now, then, because of the way we organise our society, then people will then go on and specialise in some of these things. But basically, human beings are creative. The whole caboodle is quite creative, really. So therefore, presumably, so it's just where we're at. Goodness knows where we'll be at in 500 years' time. Goodness, in terms of, will we still be selling art? Will that be a thing, or will it be something that's no longer a commodity, but it's something that just people do? I'm not saying that people couldn't earn a good living. I believe they should, but do you see what I mean? It's just
I do.
Yeah.
And with the advent of AI, everyone's like, well, you don't need artists anymore, but you do. You need it. You need to do it yourself to express yourself, even if there may be some sort of artisan, like, this is handcrafted art, therefore this is better than machine crafted art, which you get with, like, wooden spoons, for instance. If a person's made it, then it's more valuable just because you know that the person's made it. So maybe that's the future of art, that you do that. But also, you've got experts. Experts are very important, but you can't become an expert unless you start doing things and just explore the world.
Yeah, and also I think one thing for me that's really important is that people who do want to spend a large part of their life in whatever industry, that it might be, is that they know that that's something that's available to them. And similarly, going, it's for everybody. And one of the things this year that I have missed out on, because I've just not had time, is going to the actual festival. I always like to go to one festival show, but I've just not managed that this year. And the other thing is that in terms of festivals, or fringes, like I was at Prague Fringe. I've done Prague Fringe twice, Adelaide Fringe, I've done Edinburgh, done Dundee Fringe. And what's lovely is that they're all different. That's lovely, that in Adelaide there's good weather, but also it's quite contained in two very specific areas, big areas, but not completely contained there. It does spread out as well. And that was just quite interesting. And at Prague, it's a much smaller fringe, but it's really lovely, delightful, and easy to get around. Dundee's just kind of fairly new. And again, I liked the fact that the main little venue that there was in the back of a shop. You know, you went into the shop and then in the back there was this little theatre. And that's one thing I would like to see about the Edinburgh Fringe, and it's maybe happening, is that some of the places that are venues, it'd be so lovely if they could be venues more often throughout the year. And for theatre to happen, you know, like we have theatre happening at 11 o'clock, at 12:30, at 4:30. So it'd be quite nice if some of the time that was happening throughout the year. You have to be realistic as to when folk might be available, but I just think that would be a nice thing, so that theatre becomes more part of just, you know, folks' lives, really, because it is.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing. A lot of the free fringe venues are in places that aren't venues outside the fringe.
Absolutely.
I mean, Slow Progress Records, which is on Blair Street, that a lot of people, I've talked to some locals, like, what's that there? It's a great little place. You can get coffee, you can get records, and there's a little space behind that's ideal for small scale stuff.
Yeah.
And it'd be amazing if that was all the year round.
Yeah, and I'm not saying every single night of that, but just something that starts to be on the edge. Like the one that I saw the other day, that I'm trying hard to remember what it was called, at the Adnesses Centre, Panmure House, Inquiry into the Hereafter, I think it's called. And I mean, it was in a small room, really, but I just thought, God, it should be so nice if this was here maybe on a Sunday afternoon, and folk nice afternoon and go out for a walk and go to the theatre on the way past, maybe come across it, or in the back room. The pubs, of course, are upstairs in pubs as well. Just, as I say, so it becomes a more fluid relationship between theatre and audiences.
I mean, I know what you mean. The first year that I came up here with sort of improvisation show, and I was just like, I want to recreate this feeling where you can just get up at 9 o'clock and then just see shows all day and just go to random places and find shows. And I tried to recreate that in London. It's just not the same. It didn't work. So I just had something that was the floating fringe, where I had a few little events around London. But it's like, if nobody else is doing it, I tried to get people involved, but they were like, yeah. So it was a bit disheartening, really. Even the people that were involved with me that were like, yeah, that's going to be great, soon dropped off. So it was just me go, yeah, I've got a show here.
Yeah, and again, you know, it's just anything that's new and different, really.
Yeah.
But what was happening to you isn't necessarily not happening to the big theatres in many ways. It's kind of getting theatre as part of people's lives. The other thing is that I did a wee show in Copenhagen, and that was just in somebody's house, and she just invited people along to the house, and there were about 10 people there, and then we had something to eat, and then we had a chat afterwards. That's one of the things that I'd try to do with some different things. Some of my shows I try to include the audience depending on the setup, so that half an hour after the show people can stay on and tell their stories or sing their songs. So many people were telling their stories to me on the way out. There'd be a log jam of people wanting to tell me their stories. And so I tried to include that in some of my shows. And then the other one that just you might be interested, it's things like I do a show that's all my own poems, and I always want and songs, and I always want to say it's poetry, but and I immediately want to go as the tagline, but it's not boring, you know, because people, you know, sometimes have been put off poetry, and so. But at the same time, I like to sometimes offer to lead workshops so that folk can then, if they want to, separately stay behind, and then they can create their own stuff. And then the final thing I wanted to say something about is something to do with the link between theatre and people's lives and how folk, you know, just folk communicating with each other. And I did this show. Well, it's called After Chicago, and it was affecting women a place at the dinner party. It was given women who'd been hidden from history a place at the dinner party, not the actual women. It was place settings celebrating women. And I remember thinking, oh, I'd like to do something with that. And so 3 or 4 years ago, I put together a theatre piece that was, the audience were invited to come dressed as a woman that inspired them. They had a 2-course meal, there was entertainment, and yeah, it was lovely. And but then my son happened to be in Chicago, came across this woman at an event he was at, nothing to do with theatre, and it turned out that she was the granddaughter of the woman who had taught Judy Chicago, who had created this art event. Wow. In the first place. And she sent me 3 of her grandmother's prints, you know, and there's just something about that human connection that I like as well, that it's not just you do your show, you bow, everybody, you know, people pay you prepare your show, people pay the money, they sit down, they watch you, you do your stuff, they clap and they all go home. And I'd like if there's something a wee bit more than that afterwards. Maybe I'm just being greedy, but you know, just it's just that human thing, because again it goes back to I remember saying when I taught students, saying to them, if you ever get above yourself, and you probably won't because you'll probably be unemployed, remember you're only telling stories. At the same time, never forget you are telling stories. You know, so it's like it's both things. It's a humble profession, but I think it's quite an important one, because it makes links. I mean, that thing that I saw the other day, David Hume and Adam Smith. Now they're very, very, very up-here philosophers, blah blah, economists. But what this showed was their humanity, the ordinary people as well. You know, so I like theatre for that you can be in touch with people. Like at the show that I did, Judy Chicago, there was a 12th century female troubadour. I didn't know that women were troubadours at all. I didn't know women did that. So I get that link and that inspiration from that woman from the 12th century, and she kind of somehow, I'm linked to her now. And so, I don't know what else I'm trying to say. That's it. That's what I'm saying.
No, you're right. I mean, if what makes us human, I think, is the continuity and the stories, and remembering the stories in a human way. So I think that's positive for the future. If we lose everything else, if we carry on trying to tell stories, and the oral tradition is very important, because the internet and all of the books can burn, and so oral tradition through people, it's always, I think, should be important. You know, to keep us going through those dark ages to come. Around the fire would be like telling a story of olden days when we could watch Benny Hill on the television. All right, so you have got what time is your show every day?
Okay, my show is on at Venue 30, which is the Scottish Storytelling Centre on the High Street, or sometimes people call it Holyrood something, I can't remember. But it's between the castle at the top and the palace at the bottom of the High Street. It's on at 4:30, and there are still tickets for tomorrow night. That's the 25th and the 26th. 4:30. It lasts for about an hour. So it's quite a good one if you've seen a show at lunchtime and then you come there and you can go and get something to eat if the cafe's still open, I think, and then go and see an evening show. But it's also coming towards the end, so it's quite a nice one to kind of go out. I'm looking forward to, still seeing everybody just towards the very end, and then we'll have a party at the very end.
Yay, that sounds ideal. All right, thank you very much for talking to me, Morna. Okay, and have good shows and have good fringes, and I hope that Edinburgh treats you well the way it should.
Yeah, and keep going with your London stuff. I think it sounds good. It sounds good.
All right then. Okay, see you soon then. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye.